Good, good morning, everybody. This is great. I hope you have as much fun as I've had this weekend and that you think it's worth it. I think you're all very smart for taking time to come early and do this. When we were around, Vassar didn't have this program, and I wish that we had. So my presentation this morning is called 12 Tips to Achieve Professional Success. Why did I come up with this? Because everywhere I went to speak, it didn't matter what the topic was, whether it was capital markets or investments or sustainability, people always ask me the same question. How did you make it? How did you survive in Wall Street as a Latina, as a woman, as a young person? How did you become so successful? Whatever success meant to them. And I also realized that the reason why they thought I was so successful was for the wrong reasons like these ones. Because I travel all around the world meeting, interesting people. Here I am at Davos. The meetings are going on right now with, Bill Clinton and Al Gore, or with Richard Branson, one of the businessmen that I admire the most, just because not only he's a great business person, but he's humble and he donates a lot of his money, and I like that. And here I am with this woman that I adore, and I'm sure you love her too. I've had the pleasure to serve on the board of trustees of the college with her for the last 4 years, and she's even more amazing in person. And this is the last one. Here I am having lunch with the King of Spain, Felipe, and, and the guy in the middle is Steve Forbes, who I have the pleasure to write for that magazine 6 times a year, every other month. And here I am with the first female president of Ireland. But that's not why I consider myself to be so successful. I think that the way I measure my success, and it might sound kind of weird, but it's not because of the titles that I've had. It's not because of the important positions that I've held or the famous people that I meet, but it's because of how happy I was at every stage of my life. And I think people always focus so much in the success that it's something that's going to be achieved in the future, and never enjoy the present. And you guys are still very young, so my advice to you is to make sure that you understand that it's not about the destination, but it's about the journey. So enjoy every stage of your life. And I have come up, given that I only have an hour, right? I came up with 12. I can have many, many more. But the first one is that, what is success? Don't let other people define success for you. Make sure that you have that conversation within yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the question, where do I want to go? What does success mean to me? Don't let others define it for you, because you will be miserable. You want to, success to me might be to become the CEO of the whatever company I work for. For someone else, might be to have a luxury car and the house on the beach. For someone else, might be just to be a leader in their community. Who's to say that my definition of success is better than the other person? So define it for yourself, and from there, live within, whatever you think is going to make you happy. Because we're all here, guys, to be happy, not miserable. Before I move on to the second one, and I should say that they're 12, they're numbered, but they're not in any order of importance, so I just kind of name them randomly. Before I move on to the second one, I want to give you some context. I want to share with you a little bit of my background, because people always read, they hear my bio, and they think I had it really easy. So how did I end up at Vassar? I am from a small island in the Caribbean called Dominican Republic. I was born in the mountain village. I'm the oldest of 4 children, come from a very, very poor family, not even like lower middle class, poor. When I was 10, we had a hurricane that destroyed my town, and my father didn't want us to lose a school year because all the schools were being used as shelters. So he moved the family to Santo Domingo, the capital city. I was there from 7th grade to my senior year in high school. When I was a sophomore in high school, my father had to come to the US because there were no jobs there. and he needed some money to support the family. So he came to the US. He was an illegal alien, or an illegal, whatever you call it these days, illegal immigrant, working like 3 jobs in factories, in bodegas, you name it. He just needed some money to send back home. When I graduated from high school, valedictorian of my class, I said, what am I going to do here? I'm going to the States because I'm going to chase the American dream. And, that's what people say. So there were a few problems, right? 1, we didn't have any money at all. 2, I didn't speak English. And 3, I had no place to stay because my father was renting a room in Washington Heights, uptown Manhattan, and they didn't allow him to have someone else stay with him. So I had an aunt who had just moved to the States. He married an American citizen and was able to come. And I somehow convinced her to let me come stay with her. She had a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, and I was sleeping in her sofa bed in Queens. So the second week after I'm here, I'm fast asleep in the sofa bed, and I feel this like warm body on top of me, smelling of alcohol. And it was her husband who was trying to rape me. That was like my welcome to the United States. At that moment, I could have said, I'm not gonna say the bad word, but forget it, I'm leaving, I'm going back home. And I felt that I couldn't tell my father because knowing my father, he was gonna come home to my aunt's house and kill this man. I would have done the same thing. So I called the only friend I had and I said, Elcita, this just happened to me. Oh, no, I have to go back. There was no cell phones back then. There was no internet, there was no texting. So I stayed up all night. Luckily, he didn't do anything because I ran away. And I walked all around looking for a payphone so I could call my friend. And I told her what happened. Her mom said, just pack your stuff and come here. So I went to her house, and luckily, probably a month later, my dad got a job as a superintendent of a building. I don't know if you know what that is, but it sounds like a good title, but it is the person who takes the garbage out and who cleans and does everything. So he had a full-time job all day, and he would come home at night and had to do all this. I remember so well seeing my father taking out the soda cans so he could go to the supermarket and exchange them for 5 cents. I mean, that's how poor we were. So he bought me cassettes to study, to learn English because we didn't have money to take classes. And I remember, listening to those cassettes day and night. And I would tell people, don't speak Spanish to me because I need to learn English. And I'm going to go to a good school and blah, 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 blah. So I took the TOEFL, which is the test of English as a foreign language that students have to take to be able to go to college. And I barely passed. I mean, I don't know what the score was, but I maybe had like one point above that. So that allowed me to go to a community college in Queens called LaGuardia Community College, where I took oral communication, basic reading, basic writing, where I basically learned English. A professor there told me about a program at Vassar called Exploring Transfer. I don't know if you know about that program, but it's a program that takes place in the summer where the students come from all different community colleges, students who are interested in going to a 4-year institution, and you take 2 classes. It's intensive because it's the equivalent of a semester, and you live on campus and you have the whole experience. I did the program. I cry every night because I didn't know how I could write 10 pages, for a paper. And I remember being here and saying, this is where I'm coming. I'm coming to Vassar. I love this place. And everyone would say to me, Darys, it's really hard to get in here. I mean, you should have a plan B. You should apply to City College and Hunter and so on. And I'm like, no, I'm coming to Vassar. Why wouldn't they take me? I was the best student in my class, and I just did this program. Why wouldn't they take me? Of course, I didn't know. I mean, ignorance sometimes is a blessing. Well, you know the story, right? I apply, and thank God for financial aid because I got a full ride, and I came in. From Vassar, then, I went to Wall Street, which is another story. I don't have time to tell you today because it would take too much time. But I ended up in Wall Street, and my first job, I was there for 8 years. Then from Deltec, I decided that I wanted to get my MBA because at Vassar, I was a Hispanic Studies major, never took any quantitative classes, ever. And I felt like I needed that. So I went to the University of Michigan Business School. I married a class of 92 as well. And I had my son who was 3 years old, and my daughter was 3 weeks old, the one who's coming, who's class of 22. So we sold our house in New York City, moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I did my MBA. I remember that between classes, Andy would bring Maya so I could breastfeed her and then move on to my next class. So it was a lot of sacrifice during those 2 years. And during my summer, I got an internship at Goldman Sachs, and the family stayed back home in Ann Arbor, and I was going to New York every Friday night, and every Sunday night I would go back to New York. And I remember there were 34 of us, 34 interns at Goldman. Somebody saying to me, Darys, I don't think you're being smart, because Goldman is going to think you're not committed enough. You don't go to any of the weekend activities. And I said, listen, if Goldman doesn't want the whole package, which is my family, I don't want Goldman Sachs. They have to understand I'm going to give them 1,000% Monday through Friday, but weekends are for my family. So I was going home every weekend. I was one of 9 who got full-time offers of the 34. Then I ended up at Goldman. For 5 years, when I got a phone call from some of the board of directors from the stock exchange in the Dominican Republic, they were looking for a new CEO, and I said, why not? It took me 8 months to negotiate, but salary, and at Goldman I was here, economically I was coming here for the salary, and at the end I decided that it's not all about the money. I wanted my kids to feel Dominican, to speak Spanish, to be able to write, for me to take them to the countryside. And so we did that. We moved, the whole family went to the Dominican Republic. That was 10 years ago. I was at the exchange for 5 years. Then I moved to, and as Lisa mentioned, I was the first woman in Latin America to head an exchange. So every meeting I ever had, every country I ever visited with all my colleagues, I was the only woman in the room. Then I moved to an asset management firm to do something completely different, to be the vice president of corporate sustainability. When they called me, I was like, what is that? Doesn't have to do with environment, why are you calling me? But you always have to be open and flexible, because you never know what's gonna be next. And that has always been the case for me. When they called me to be the CEO, I could have said, oh my God, I've never been a CEO, I've never managed a company. But who cares? You learn on the job. So last September, I left, and what I'm doing now is basically talking to many, I go to many universities, talking to students, and I go to companies and and I do workshops and, anything they want about leadership or about, how to invest your money, you name it. So, and I love it. This was my calling all along. So why am I giving you all this context? Because people always think that I had it so easy, and that to achieve success is so fast and so easy. People want shortcuts. And you know what? No, you have to work for whatever you want. And I want you guys to know that always there will be somebody who will tell you, no, it's not possible, that's impossible, you're crazy. Don't listen to them. Because if I had listened to people, I would still be in that mountain village where I was born, doing God knows what. When I wanted to come here, my grandmother was the first one who said, ay, Dios mío, are you crazy? You're going to let her go? She's going to be doing whatever she wants. She's going to be alone and blah, blah, blah. And I remember when my mom came to visit me at Vassar and the bathrooms were co-ed, she almost died. She's like, what? So she made me stand in Maine at the bathroom. She's like, don't let any man come in until I'm done. And I was dying. So anyway, the second one is passion. If you don't feel passion for it, forget about it. Because I always think that passion is what's going to make you get up every morning and give 500%. Imagine, guys, if you have to get up and go to a job that you hate. I mean, seriously, you're gonna be miserable. And you don't have to do that. You can choose your job. So, what do you like? Do you like to deal with people? Do you like to crunch numbers? What is it that you like? For example, I worked really long hours when I was in Wall Street, and a lot of people call me la esclava, because, the slave. But I loved it. There were times that I didn't know what country I was in. Like, I would get up in the middle of the night, I'm like, okay, where am I today? Because on Monday I was in Peru, Tuesday I was in Ecuador, Wednesday I was in Venezuela, and it's tiring, but I loved it. And I kept saying, people are paying me to do this? My job was to interview presidents and finance ministers and governors of central banks and taxi drivers and CEOs, and here I was, like 20-something, and I thought it was the most exciting job ever. So find something that you love. Don't chase just the money. Seriously, the money is great. I'm not gonna say it isn't. The money is great, but you need to love what you do, because that's the only way you're gonna become really good at it, and the money will come. The money will come. So again, choose the classes that you love, choose a career that you love, and it will make a big difference. Where do I have to point? Here? Okay. So you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You have to know yourself. Make sure that you play to your strengths, and whatever weaknesses you have, that you work on those. It's great to know, I'm good at whatever it is that you're good at. If you're not good in Excel, take a class. If you hate speaking in public, make sure you practice. Anything just takes practice, because practice makes perfect. Let's see here. And this is really important. Face your fears. So many of us let fear stop us from doing something. And you know what? You're never going to know what you're capable of doing until you actually throw yourself at it. And usually, we are surprised. Usually, we are capable of doing a lot more. So don't let fear stop you. If I had, when I went to my first interview at Wall Street, I didn't know what a stock was. I didn't know what a bond was. When I was at Vassar, I was like, the Wall Street Journal, that is so boring. It has no pictures. I love the New York Times. But yeah, I said, well, I have nothing to lose. So I read something, I was like, okay, I'm going. And I went. And I remember, I've told the stories to the students who were in my finance cluster, that one of the questions they asked me was, I'm a little concerned that you never took an econ class. And I said, do I need to take an economics class? I'm Dominican. If you're Latin, every single day you learn about economics, because the currency devalues, because the central bank prints money, because inflation, you have a salary today and it's worth much less the next day. So I told them, I know all that stuff. I didn't have to take that at Vassar. And I guess, I show my confidence, because you have to be confident. You can't just freeze and say, I could have said, oh, you're right, I never took economics. No, they want to see how you react. And take risk. You have to take risks no matter where you go. And I'm not talking about stupid risks, educated risks, but take them, especially now at this age. You're so young. It's not the same. I'm 48 right now, and I have 3 children, 2 in college, 1 in 7th grade, and it's not the same thing, because I have responsibilities. But you guys, just jump and take risks. Just do know that alone, you're not gonna get anywhere. You might think you're, whatever, but you're not gonna get anywhere alone. So it is crucial that you find a mentor. This weekend has been great, because you can basically ask all of us any questions you want. And you can ask anything. I would tell them, I told the kids yesterday, I told the students, but I have, my son is your age. I told him, ask us anything. But when you go out there, make sure, you know what you hear all the time, that there are not stupid questions? You hear that all the time, right? There are stupid questions. There are. So make sure when you go on an interview that you have done your due diligence. You can ask anything, but when When candidates come to me asking me something that is like right there on the first page of the website, to me, I'm just gonna think he's lazy, she's lazy, she didn't do the due diligence. I mean, that's obvious. Why is she asking me that? So don't, do some due diligence before you go on an interview, because you want to impress. That first impression is key. Once you get the job, identify who are the key people on the job and ask them for coffee. A lot of people like to drink coffee. It works. And you have to make sure that you tell them what your objectives are, what your dreams are, what you want to do, because just kind of going there and doing your job, not much is going to happen. You have to just make sure that you go get whatever you want. And, next time that an opportunity comes up, I'm going to say, oh, but Alan told me that, he wanted to move to finance. Alan, because I talk to you so much, I'm sorry, I'm using you. I'm going to think of him next time that I have an opportunity come up. So you want to be on people's radar. And I hear say, get a mentor and a sponsor. What is the difference between those? A mentor is someone who basically you can be completely honest about and tell them, help me. How do I get to this position? How do I, what do I say? This is my weakness. And a sponsor is someone who you're gonna go there like all polished and knowing, being like all prepped. And the person who's gonna be behind doors defending you is usually a person who's more senior. And in Wall Street, these are two terms that are used all the time. Mentor and a sponsor, they're very different. I don't know about you guys, but in our culture, in the Latin culture, they always tell you, don't speak about yourself. That's really bad. That's bad taste. Let others do it for you. How is it in here? I mean, you guys, the American people, I don't know. But forget about that. You need to promote yourself, and do it from like being confident, not arrogant. If you think that's just going to your job, whatever that is, 9 to 5, or 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., if you think that just being at your desk, doing a good job, somebody's gonna notice, you're wrong. It doesn't work that way in real life. So, like I said, ask people for coffee, make sure that, you identify who those people are, that they know what you want, and send emails from time to time. I'm working on this project, you have to be kind of suave, right? Like, don't be arrogant. But people have to know what you're doing. And the key people have to know what you're doing. Be prepared for every meeting and never be late, because that's noticeable. Actually, be early, not even on time, be early. And I mentioned this yesterday too, have a strong handshake. That sounds like so, obvious. But my God, I hate when people go and shake your hand and it's like, that doesn't show confidence. That doesn't show confidence. Don't squeeze the hand so hard that, because sometimes that happens too. But have a hard handshake. Whenever you have something to say, just raise your hand. So many people have something to say. I want you to raise your hand. I'm going to ask you a question. How many times have you been in a meeting and you are thinking of saying something, and then the next person says the same thing, and you're like, damn, I was going to say that. But you didn't have the guts to say it. Come on, who? You see, almost all of you. Why? Why? If you have something to say, just say it. And especially women. Guys, especially women. Men can talk and talk and talk, and women are there just, speak up. Raise your hand. But don't just speak so that you hear yourself talk, because so many people like that, and it's annoying when you're in a meeting and somebody just keeps talking. Only speak if you have something to, some value to add. But please make sure that you are heard, that you raise your hand, and that you say whatever you have to say. And I mentioned this already, that there's a big difference between being confident and being arrogant. For example, I'm going to give you an anecdote. When I was, in 1999, I was 29, and I was in Brazil. In the 90s, it was like a disaster. Mexico had collapsed, then Asia collapsed, and Russia. And it was January of 1999, and Brazil was losing $1 billion a day in reserves. That is a lot of money. So I was sent to Brazil. There were always, these meetings were 9 men and moi, the only woman, tiny, I'm 5'1", and all these men could be my grandfathers. They all had gray hair. And, so the first day, Monday, we're in Rio de Janeiro with all the CEOs from companies, and we kept saying, there's a problem, you're losing $1 billion a day. What's gonna happen? And they kept saying, no, the government is, going to support the real, and they're gonna make sure that they're not going to devalue. And I'm like, wow, I called New York and I said, Houston, we have a problem. Because nobody here seems to think that there's a problem. And so the next day, we fly to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and we're meeting there with some ministers. And I said, Señor Ministro, can you tell me how you're going to do this? Because you're losing a billion, not a million, $1 billion a day. And his answer was, how old are you? That's what he said. And I was like, I could just tell him to go, where. But let me just say, I said, with all due respect, I'm just talking from the facts. You're losing $1 billion. How are you going to maintain the real? And he said, the problem with Wall Street these days is that these 20-something-year-old kids think they know it all. And I said, okay. We fly from Brasilia to Sao Paulo the next morning. The government had decided to have a band. So a band like, the central bank would intervene if the real touched the top and intervene if they touched the bottom. That lasted like 2 seconds, 2 minutes. The market collapsed and the market closed, and for the day they couldn't trade. And I was telling the other man, can you call the minister, please, and tell him, that this 29-year-old knew what she was talking about? But I was just kidding, I didn't call. But I really wanted to do that. But what did I do? I called New York and I said, listen, everything was showing me that they were all saying that there was no problem, but my gut was telling me something else. So sometimes you have to go with your guts and act on it. Let's see, the next one. You have heard this one all weekend. I mean, network. You must have a strong network, and this is great. I mean, I told Stacy, I want to come back because I love this program. I mean, you kids are amazing. When I was a senior, I wasn't even that ready as you are, and you have resumes that are just like so impressive. And make sure that you keep those relationships alive. Don't just look for people when you need them, because that's kind of, I always say that you should have a board of directors. A board of directors is supposed to be diverse. It's supposed to be key people that you can go to if you need help with whatever, career counseling. If if you broke up with your boyfriend and you're upset, you have a friend who you can go cry with. But you need to have that board of directors, that network, to always, get help. Because remember, alone, we don't get anywhere. And lean on them when you need help. I'm not good at this. This one is really important to me, and I know you're all very young and might say, whatever, because we think we have our whole life ahead of us and that we're just gonna kill ourselves and work, and and then see the fruit of our labor later. But you have to find equilibrium in your life. It's not all about work. Be the best that you can be, give 500%, but you should never forget about the biggest asset, which is you. If you're not well, if you don't take care of yourself, how are you gonna do a good job when you go to your employer? How are you gonna take care of whatever, when you have kids, your spouse? You can't. So make sure that you find something else other than taking classes. Make sure that you're exercising, make sure that that you are in some club, some activity. Do something else. You want to be a well-rounded person, not just study, or work. I say here, take care of your health, your mind, your spirit. Dedicate time to those that you love, whoever they are. We always think that we have forever, and I can tell you I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my youngest sister right now is dying of cancer. And to me, that has completely changed my life, because you hear that people have cancer all the time, but you never know until it hits you. I mean, whenever I have a problem now, and I'm sorry, I say, my God, this is nothing. My sister is dying, and she is fighting every single day. And I don't know if I'm going to get a phone call this afternoon, because she's really, really in bad shape. So you're not going to have people forever. Make sure that you tell them that you love them and spend time with them, because life is very fragile. And you should find something that you're passionate about, whatever that is. I never did any sports, not even when I was at Vassar. I think that the most thing I did is I played, is it badminton? The little thing that you play in the air. That was my sport, because I didn't like to sweat. And, I'm like, no. So I never had, like I guess my sport was dancing. As a Dominican person, you dance from the time you're learn how to walk. I've been dancing my whole life. But I never did a sport. So 2012 was a very difficult year for me. I was so stressed that I was getting sick. And I said to myself, my God, I'm going to get an ulcer. This is really hard. I have to find something to do besides work. And I was, again, at Rio de Janeiro. I don't know if any of you have been there, but everybody in Rio looks amazing, and everybody does sports. And I was staying at the Copacabana Hotel, looking out at the beach, and everybody's rollerblading, biking, doing the bars, And I was like, what can I do? But I don't want to learn to play golf or, whatever. I want something easy. So I see people running, and I was like, I can do that. I can just put my shorts and tennis shoes, and I can do that. So I get back home, and I call a coach, and I said, I want to start running. What do I need to do? She said, come to this Parque Mirador, which is like Central Park over there, at 5 a.m. I was like, what? Did you say p.m.? She's like, no, 5 a.m. And I said, you're kidding, right? I said, no, thanks. Hung up. So a week went by, 2 weeks went by, and I was like, but I really want to run. And all the coaches train at that time, because it's really hot in Santo Domingo. So if you don't train at that time, then it's just it's unbearable. So I called her again, and I said, okay, I'll go on Monday, and I'll try. Guys, I went on Monday at 5 a.m. I was dying, because driving at that time, dark and, no one around. But I made it to the park, and that was 5 years ago, and now I am addicted to this. So this was in November of 2012. There was a whole group going to the Miami half marathon in January, and I said, I want to go to Miami and run. That sounds fun. She said, let me train you for 5K first, and then you can think about, 13 miles. I'm like, but I really, that's me. If I say I'm going to do something, no one stops me. I said, no, I want to do the 13 mile. So she said, fine, just come, do this thing religiously, and you'll go. So I went to Miami. I ran my half marathon. I loved it. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, I'm like, yes, now I have to do a full marathon, because that's the next step. So in November, a year later, I ran the New York City Marathon, which is the most amazing experience ever. I've done it 3 times already in New York, because I'm going to do it again this year. My point is that in running, I have found, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's just something that when I'm running, I solve problems, I pray, I relax, I do so many things, and I forget about the world. The market can crash, anybody can, whatever, and I'm okay, because I'm running. So find that makes you happy, and that you just feel find something that you can truly be passionate about. Maybe some of you do already. I didn't find it until I was 44. If you don't believe in yourself, who will? You have to be confident. You project that. It's so easy to detect when when a student or anybody comes to you and you're like, so look at the person in the eye when you're talking, do the handshake the way I told you, and just believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, others won't believe in you. You have to be your first fan, your number one fan. I already said this. If you have something to say it. Make sure that people listen to your ideas, because keeping those ideas inside, I don't know about you, but in Spanish we say eso aficia. It's like, so make sure you say it. Never, ever go to your boss with a problem unless you have thought of a solution. That, you have no idea how many people do that. And it's not that you have to have the right answer. You don't have to have the right answer, but, come to me and say, we have a problem, and I've thought of this, and that. What do you think? But don't just dump the problem on your boss, because that doesn't look good. It makes you look bad. Again, don't let fear stop you from doing anything, because we don't know what we're capable of doing until we try. And always have an elevator speech ready. Whenever, I remember at Goldman Sachs, I could bump into Lloyd Blankfein any day, anytime. He was there on my floor. So if he tells, in this case, he's a CEO of Goldman Sachs, if he tells you, hey, Darys, what's up? And you have to have something to say. Don't just be there like, and look like an idiot. You have to have that ready, and you have to tell your story. You have to have that, practice it 1,000,000 times, but you have to have a story. We talked about yesterday how it's not just good enough to have a great resume. We have interviewed students who would look amazing in resume, and when they go in person, they just can't tell you a story. They're really bad interviewers. So you have to have the whole package. Make sure that you sell your story by being confident and just making sense. And you will fall many times, because failure is part of success. We think that, you just want to have, you want to be successful, but failure is part of that. And you will fall so many times, and that's what makes you, that's what teaches you. You learn from those. You need to have the courage to get up again and, have the strength to keep going. And if you don't find the strength within you, make sure that you use that board of directors that I talked to you about. Call that friend. Call anybody who's going to push you. It could be your boyfriend, girlfriend, your mom, anybody. And changes are always good. At the time, they might seem like chaos. They might seem that it's the most horrible thing that has happened. But at the end, it always works out. And learn from your mistakes so you don't do them again and again. I'll tell you, when I started at Deltec Asset Management, it was a few months after I started, my boss's boss gave me an order. I was in the trading floor, and I don't remember if it was a sell or a buy. I just know that I did the opposite. And I only found out because back then, guys, everything was manual. And today everything is like digital, but you had to write a ticket by hand, and whenever you did a transaction, the counterparty will call and say, okay, you sold me, 500 million Panamanian bonds, 10% maturing 2020. We're done. Like that's how you usually, that's the lingo. And when the guy tells me that I bought, I'm like, oh my God, I was supposed to sell. It was $60 million. I think the largest money I had ever seen in my life was $100. Like, I remember where I came from, very poor family. And I was saying, oh my God, $60 million. I was dying. My stomach just shrank. My heart was beating so fast. And I ran to my, the CEO of the company right away, and I said, Arthur, I just made this mistake, and I'm sorry. I almost had tears in my eyes. And he said to me, Darys, just calm down. The best thing you did was to come here and tell me. You didn't hide it. I don't know if you're aware that some banks in Wall Street have collapsed because traders do a wrong thing and they want to hide it, and they keep doing, and they keep doing. By the end of the day, the bank is gone. You know that, right? If you, it's happened. So he was like very glad that I went, and I am so glad that I made that mistake and that I did it beginning of my career, because never again. I was so careful every time. I was like, buy, 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 sell, sell, sell. I kept telling myself, I can't make the mistakes again. And it's not, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's how you react to them that's gonna make the difference. So don't hide it, admit it, own it, take responsibility for it, because that makes you a more mature person and a more credible person. Pay it forward. To me, since I was little, my parents always taught me that it didn't matter how poor we were, there were people who were poorer than us, and we always had to help people. Because, what good is success if you can't really share with others? And what good is success if you can't have like an impact in others? So rather than measuring success based on our individual, accomplishments, I think I like to measure success based on how many people we were able to impact in a positive way. Have you seen that movie, Pay It Forward? Yes? I always cry every time I see it. So it is crucial that you help others. In my case, for example, when I was here in New York City, I was very, very involved with the Dominican community. I sat on some nonprofit boards, and to me, it was important to help like Dominican women, Dominican kids. And funny enough, that's how I got my job at the Dominican Republic Stock Exchange, because you never know how or things are happening. We formed an organization called Dominicans on Wall Street, which is a nonprofit, and the members were all, Dominicans who were in Wall Street, like the name says, in finance or in law. And we used to go to Dominican Republic and be sort of the liaison between the two countries. What we wanted to do was to help develop the capital markets. And I used to go and take always people from, Goldman, from Deutsche Bank, from JP Morgan, et cetera. And when the opportunity came up, they thought of me because they had already seen me in action. They had already seen me at all these meetings, and they knew, according to them, that I could handle it. Number 11, we have 2 more. Ask for help when you need it. We all love to hear that we're so good, or you're good at this. But most important than that is to know where you need help. If you are at a job and they don't have like a program where you get feedback, make sure you ask for feedback. You ask your boss for feedback, because you need to know what is the room for improvement. You need to know what you need to learn, what your weaknesses are, and that's the only way that you're going to grow anywhere. And it's great, yeah, it's like we all love it. Oh, you're so good, but do know what your weaknesses are. And you only know that by asking for feedback. Don't believe that you have to know it all, because none of us do. None of us do. I mean, I've been in meetings where people ask me something and I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I'll get to that and I'll come back to you. And it's okay. Don't make it up. Don't make something up. And if you don't know something, ask. I say there, but I said it before. There are some stupid questions, and even though people tell you that they're not. So don't be one of them. And number 12, this is to me, it's number 12, but to me it's the most important one. It's integrity and ethics. Today, especially in the Latin culture, unfortunately, that's because I am Latin and I can say it and I live there. People like to take shortcuts. People like results right away. And that's not how it works. Nothing in life worth having comes easily. You have to work for it. So it takes so long to build like a credible name, to build your reputation, to have integrity, and it takes 1 second to take it away. 1 second. You make a mistake, and how you handle that mistake, can basically take your credibility and your integrity away. And only you are responsible for that, not anybody else. I've had, people have come to me to ask me to do crazy stuff. And I'm like, I want to sleep at night. That is the best thing, guys, to be able to sleep at night and to know that, for example, I always say that one of the things that I'm most proud of is the fact that no one, not anywhere in the world, can point a finger at me and say that I've done something wrong. something illegal, that I stole, nothing. And I have 3 children, and they're never gonna hear that their mom did something wrong. And to me, that is the most valuable thing. At Goldman Sachs, they used to say all the time, if you don't want to see it in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't even think about it. In my case, I always think of my parents and my kids. If I don't want to embarrass them, I won't even forget it. It's not an option. So, again, these are 12 that I have identified. It's not a recipe. I'll come. This is, you can, in case you want to contact me, but there are many more that I'm not going to go over because of time. But, for me, for example, staying humble is something that to me is really important. Being authentic. At Goldman, we all had lunch on the trading floor. And I would have my rice and beans and tostones because, I'm Dominican, that's my food. And everybody was having salad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm having my food. I love merengue, I love bachata, that's me, salsa. Just be authentic because you'll always feel at home no matter where you go. And, if you ever become really famous or very successful, do not let it go to your head. Make sure that you stay humble because that's one of the key virtues of a person. So again, make sure, these are just some. This is not a recipe. It's not one size fits all. Think about what success means to you. Have that honest conversation with yourself. And these are just some of the things that help me navigate that world. And I hope that, that they have help, that they will help you. If you need to contact me, if you have any questions, you want to talk about anything that I've mentioned today, or anything at all about capital markets or anything, please feel free to contact me. And for those who speak Spanish, I just put my book in Amazon. I just wrote my book, and I'm so excited. That's like my baby, because it took me a year to write it. It's called El Hierro que Forjó a la Dama, and that's because my nickname is Thatcher, from Margaret Thatcher, which is funny because I don't look, I'm not like her at all. But it's only because I'm kind of tough in a board meeting. I have no problem telling people to just be quiet and listen and whatever. So they say, oh, pero she's like the Iron Lady, the Thatcher. And so I didn't want to name my book The Iron Lady because it was, so I don't know how to translate it, I'm sorry. But it's kind of like, El Hierro is like this, anybody speak Spanish here who can help me? How do you translate that? Right, it's kind of like what made me who I am today, like all this stuff that I had to go through, a ton of anecdotes about my years in Wall Street, and being the only woman in the room all the time, how I kind of dealt with that. We talked a little bit about that during the Women in the Workplace yesterday. So that's my presentation. I think we have 5 minutes if anybody has any questions, right? And do ask, please. Remember, don't be shy. Nobody? Was I that good? Nobody has a question? Okay then. Thank you, guys.